What is process?
When I think about process, and this may help a little, we tend to think about process as if it's transformation of things,
Yeah.
but that's not the complete notion of process. Process is partly thing, partly change, and partly that which is neither thing nor change, that is actually new. And so part of the issue here is that we as again a Western culture have the notion of process as if it could be described purely in terms of existence and interaction. Existence being the things and interaction being the changes.
Yeah.
But there's a creative aspect to it as well, right? I can't think about the universe without including the notion of creation. But one of the things that implies when we talk about process in the first person sense is that I can't treat creation as if it is somewhere far away or other than right here and now, right? If I'm thinking about the universe in the sense that a physicist would think about it, creation happens first and then it's done. And when it's done, there's a bunch of stuff. And that stuff bumps into one another, and the bumping into one another happens after there is stuff. We call the bumping into one another transformation or interaction. And the things that are bumping into one another, the existing things that were the outcome of creation. So in effect, there's this sort of disconnection, right? There's several levels of disconnection, right? And I'm talking the classical physics way of thinking about this. Now, there's a reason why physics is required to think about it this way, but we'll talk about that in a minute. And those reasons turn out not to be good reasons as far as the metaphysics is concerned. So it's important to go back to this. But in the moment, I just want you to notice that at first, creation and then a cessation of creation, then existence, right? And the process of existence is therefore what happens after creation is completed, or what is after creation is completed. So there's a kind of disconnect there. Then there is existence that could be completely static. And then if we decide to make it less static, we could talk about interactions subsequent to that. So there's a kind of disconnection there because it could be completely subsequent to existence, right? I could imagine an empty universe or a full universe, but with nothing moving. In either way, there's this notion of static, no process, no interactions. And then to top it off, there's nothing that connects those interactions back to creation, i.e., there's no requirement that those interactions produce anything. There's no novelty that comes out of those interactions. It could be just stuff bumping into one another in this semi-chaotic sort of way or some majorly organized sort of way as if it was all, subject to some sort of Newtonian plan. But the idea here is that creation isn't going to happen again, right? So in this sense, we're looking at three different kinds of disconnection: from creation to existence, from existence to interaction, and from interaction back to creation. That's the way physics holds the universe, that these are three distinct, separable concepts, right? It's treating them as separable. I can vary any one of them without the other two. And I can have one occurring without the other two. I could have existence without creation or interaction if I wanted. Again, from a physics point of view, you could imagine a totally static universe that's remained static for all time, right? Einstein was good at this, rolling time into space, and therefore conceiving of the universe as a four-dimensional time-space manifold with matter in it. And so, when we're looking at these sorts of things, we can say, well, I can have existence and interaction without creation, or I could even maybe try to conceive of interaction without existence, although that gets kind of tricky, or creation without existence. That's also kind of tricky. But, if we think about energy as not an existing thing, but just some sort of flow, then maybe we could get away with it. But the idea here is that fundamentally physics will just think of these as disconnected. And as long as we're talking about the universe, maybe we can get away with that. When we're talking about things like first person perspectives, And the process of the relationship between the subjective and objective, I can no longer have that kind of distinguishability. I'm therefore saying that in the sense of process having interaction type aspects, because that's what change is, right? Process doesn't mean anything without change. And change doesn't mean anything without things that are changing, so to speak, right? So we have the notion of existence and we have the notion of interaction. Where does creation come in? Well, it has to, right? If axiom 3 is applying, then in effect we're saying that in the first-hand sense of process right here and now, that all process in the here and now, all process that is the being of the here and now, has to have creation right here and now. And how do we account for that? Well, actually, it turns out to be really easy. We have a concept of the future, right? In a sense, the future is that which is not yet, right? From a first person perspective, the future is distinct from the past. The past is that which has been, and it has a fixed character and a form. We can think about that as roughly equivalent to the notion of existence. In the present moment, we can think of that as being change, right? Because time is. But then how do we account for the future? Well, that's where newness happens. If there wasn't any newness, we would be able to predict the future exactly. We would be able to say that we could know everything about the future. But the fact that we can't know everything about the future, that there's something inherently unknown about that, that's an outcome of process here and now, that's the creative part. That's the unknown bit. And when we say that something about the future is new or unknown or unknowable, we're essentially saying that the fact of creation as being part of process, as being part of the here and now, is therefore intrinsic. So when I use the term process, I actually have to think about it as a thing that is not a thing, as a dynamic that isn't just a dynamic. That in effect, the way that we hold the process has some notion of thingness, some notion of change, and something else, which is new. And so that way of holding the notion of process is not well held within physics. Physics can't think of it that way. In fact, it can't even think about change. You'll notice that both the major theories of physics, general relativity and quantum mechanics, try to factor time out. Right? The general relativity will take time and factor it into a dimension of space, whereas quantum mechanics will basically take time and will factor it into the evolution of the Schrodinger equation, but that's a deterministic thing. So in effect, it's joins time to possibility. And there's no variation in the possibility. The only place time reappears is in this weird phenomenon we call the quantum jump, when the measurement actually happens. But that's not in the third person, that's in the first person again. Right? The measurement is a signal in the first person, not a hypothetical in the third. Otherwise, it would be part of the Schrodinger equation evolution again. So the very action of considering time requires a first person perspective, requires that the notion of the future, in a sense, have a touching point to the here and now, right? That the future isn't somewhere far away from the here and now. It is an inherent aspect of it, the same way that the past is an inherent aspect of it. That past, present, and future are distinct, inseparable, and non-interchangeable. And it's the inseparability piece that makes process richer than the notion that we would normally hold with that concept in the first person. Anything that is process that is held within the third person is a pattern. But not all patterns are process. There is something in process which can't be encoded in pattern. And if it could be, then mathematics would be equivalent to physics, but it isn't. Mathematics is deterministic. Physics is not. Physics is causal. And it's that difference that is the thing that comes up.